The following is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
After the first two episodes of Rocked Up, you have an understanding of what culture did, or in some cases didn't exist, in the state of Arkansas when it came to wrestling. For Little Rock to become the first Division I wrestling program and the first major college team to take to the mats in nearly 60 years, something had to pave the way. Part of it was high school wrestling. Another key component to Little Rock even being born was a small university in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, with an often mispronounced name. Ouachita Baptist was the first school in Arkansas to field a wrestling program since the 1950s, when the Division II institution added the sport in 2010. Today on Rocked Up, we'll talk to Rex Horn, the president of Ouachita Baptist University at the time the school added wrestling, and Mike Moyer, executive director of the National Wrestling Coaches Association, who's helped launch over 200 college wrestling programs since the turn of the century. Founded in September of 1886, then as Ouachita Baptist College, Ouachita Baptist University is a private Baptist liberal arts college in Arkadelphia, Arkansas. The university's name's taken from the Ouachita River, which forms the eastern campus boundary, and according to Wikipedia, it's affiliated with the Arkansas Baptist State Convention. Ouachita is spelled Ouachita. Ouachita? Ouachita? Yeah, you're not alone. But in Arkansas, Ouachita is a pretty reputable name. So when Greg Hatcher sits down with a man named Rex Horn, things start to get moving pretty quickly.
Yeah, Greg Hatcher, who has become over the years one of my very dearest friends, was on campus speaking one day to our business school, and I'd invited him and those with him, and a few of us gathered for lunch that day. We were also talking about insurance needs and things like that. And Greg quickly turned, however, from insurance to wrestling, and said he told me something about it related to his own life and experience, and what an advantage he felt that it could be for Ouachita.
Here's Greg Hatcher's recollection of said conversation.
After we got high school wrestling started, I was asked to give a speech to the seniors at Ouachita Baptist University. Rex Horn, who was the president there at the time, was listening to that speech, and afterwards he just said, "Hey, would you like to go to lunch?" And he'd been a minister of the biggest church in town that everybody knew, but I hadn't gotten to know him. And after he served as a minister or preacher, he went to work as the president of OBU. So we sat down for lunch, and he told me he wanted me to help him with his insurance at OBU. And I told him, let's talk about wrestling first, and then we'll talk about the insurance. So we had that meeting, and I explained to him why wrestling would bring more students into his college, actually make his college money. For a Division II or Division III school or NAI, it makes a college money. It doesn't cost them money, because if you bring in 40 students and a few are on scholarship at Division II or NAI, none at Division III, then it's a moneymaker. The very next day, he said he'd do it, and we had our first college, wrestling program. College presidents know they need more students at that level, and we've now started wrestling programs at 13 different colleges.
And just so we're clear, that's not 13 different colleges in the state of Arkansas. It's 13 colleges that Hatcher has been involved with nationwide, including reintroducing wrestling at his alma mater of Alma up in Michigan. But Ouachita got the ball rolling. Shortly thereafter, Central Baptist College in Conway would announce it was adding wrestling at the NAI level. Arkansas Baptist in Little Rock, a junior college, starts the sport in 2011. In 2013, we have more teams added, with Williams Baptist in Walnut Ridge adding an NAI program and Lyon College adding a men's and women's program, as the Scots in Batesville, Arkansas, became the first school in Arkansas to offer a varsity college women's opportunity. In 2014, Division III would follow, as the University of the Ozarks would add a program. All of them with Hatcher's footprint, all of them not possible without Rex Horn first saying yes. But finances aside, what else swung Horn in the direction of wrestling?
What it teaches young men, and that's one of the things too, and I wouldn't say this is just faith-based or private institutions, certainly the publics as well. You're looking to help instill not only the education that is so necessary going forward in life. And it teaches character, it teaches discipline, it teaches self-confidence. It teaches how to lose and to still be a good sport. It teaches sportsmanship about it. You learn that there are rules and regulations that you live by, that you wrestle by. You don't try to cheat the rules. You learn how to do it right. And I mean, how could that not help a young man, whether he starts out as a young boy on through college and all of that sort of thing? How could that not help in any career, any profession, or just being a good man along the way? I think wrestling can contribute to that equal to any other sport.
Remember I told you that story to tell you this story to tell you that story? Now here's where it circles back to high school wrestling. Does Ouachita Baptist start a college wrestling program if high school wrestling isn't a thing?
That would be difficult, and it would be. And so the fact that it started like it did in the high schools and all was a real plus for colleges, truly. And we have a number of Arkansas guys. I don't know the roster this year. I'm not there any longer, but I still follow it. But there'll be Arkansas guys represented there, and so that's very important and very helpful. And really, you're just trying to look at it too. Does it just make sense overall when you consider all things? Does it make sense? And for us, it did. And I think it's proven over 8 or 9 years now that it's become a vital part of the athletic program and offerings at Ouachita.
I also don't want to glance over the financial aspect. You did hear Greg Hatcher say it makes a college money. It makes a college money. Let's hear from a university president on how that kind of works and why starting the sport made financial sense.
Well, because I think in our region, there are far more high school wrestlers that I think would like to be able to say they were a college athlete, that they wrestled on the collegiate level. And plus, as you know, the competition is astounding at the D2 level in any sport. So we just thought that it would do several things. We thought that it would add students that we'd not normally get from an administrative perspective, that it could be something that would gain some positive notoriety for the university. And frankly, if you're not willing to take an opportunity or a challenge that could work out well, what's life all about? What's leadership all about? If you don't try to see new things and give it a run, even if you have to after several years say, hey, it didn't work like we thought it would. So I really didn't have any real doubt about it. Greg was very supportive. Helped us find a coach, those kinds of things to get the program started, and we had young men that ended up coming and rolling on campus that normally I don't know if any, maybe a few would have even considered coming to Ouachita.
The National Wrestling Coaches Association, which was founded in 1928, has served as a voice for wrestling coaches on the scholastic and collegiate level for, again, approaching 90-something years. Mike Moyer, former wrestling coach at George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia, has been at the helm as the executive director for almost 20 years. Part of the organization's goals the last 15 years has been trying to bring wrestling back to college campuses where it once was, or starting wrestling programs at enrollment-driven institutions. They're still knocking on the door to the big dogs, though.
We do a couple things as an organization. One of the things we do is every fall we send a letter to every college president and athletic director in the country, thanking those that sponsor wrestling and encouraging those that don't to please consider doing so for a laundry list of compelling reasons. And it's amazing, but literally just off of that letter, we'll get 30 or more inquiries. Again, what's really driving this is student loan debt is escalating through the roof, and a growing number of colleges and universities at all levels across the country are really starting to get squeezed for enrollment. Wrestling is such an attractive strategy to grow enrollment because it's relatively inexpensive. It has a huge population of high school participants, and it's still limited number of college opportunities. So that's kind of the elevator speech in so many. I would say the other piece of this is college presidents really pride themselves on getting first-generation college-bound students to their campus and to leave with a degree. And across all three NCAA divisions, wrestling ranked second on the men's side with regards to first-generation college-bound students. So that's a pretty important speaking point as well.
And we're going to circle back to Greg Hatcher, of course.
So, we of course do what we normally do in sending the letters out to all the college presidents and athletic directors, but we end up getting this call from Mr. Hatcher and saying, hey, I have this idea.
And it's not just letters. Mike spends a ton of time on the phone. A ton. Unlimited plans were made for this guy. If he's made a pitch to one university president, he's made the pitch to 100. How many times has Rex Horn heard it?
I've had a few along the way, and then Mike's another remarkable guy who's so committed and passionate about wrestling. But they've communicated in various ways that they were always ready to help us in any way possible, and so it's been a. I don't have any negative thing to say about those who oversee wrestling, the people that are interested in it, rather than. In some sports, it's kind of like what can you do for us? But wrestling is one of those that what can we do to make your wrestling program better? What can we do to get you to start one? I mean, it's very much a very positive experience for anyone, and that's really makes it for those of us who are not knowledgeable about it or whatever. It makes it very easy for us to see the steps that need to be taken.
If you're outside of the sports world, you might be wondering, why add athletics? Why not add academic programs? Add things that will also draw people to campus. That's a good point. But what does sports add to the campus atmosphere?
Naturally, what people think about athletics is it brings nothing to the school, and you're fully funding or you're giving a full scholarship to so many athletes. Just not the case on D2 level. I mean, take, for instance, something like football at our school. You might have 30 scholarships, but you got 100 guys on the team. You just do the math kind of deal. Wrestling, the percentage would be much lower than that. I mean, the amount of scholarships you have versus the number of guys you bring on campus. And all of this works to the whole because those students are sitting in accounting classes or communications class or studying to be a doctor in pre-meds, maybe a minister in our School of Christian Studies. So I think you just look at that. And what I would encourage parents who are considering sending their students to a D2 type school is just to really talk with the admissions people because they're skilled and have learned how to compare cost even between private schools and public schools, and you begin to see that there's a whole lot more similarities when you get down to the bottom line than what you would think. So that's the way we approached it.
So how does Ouachita unfold from Mike Moyer's perspective?
Sure. So what will happen is Greg Hatcher will, he'll call me and say, Mike, we have a prospect at, in this case, Ouachita Baptist, and we'll put together a PowerPoint presentation that's customized uniquely to that school. And it provides all the facts and figures that a college president or board of trustees would be interested in knowing. In fact, this particular PowerPoint presentation is typically used with boards of trustees. It's the presidents like it because it's turnkey, right? They can just walk through slide by slide. So one of Greg Hatcher's favorite quotes, it's become my favorite quote, is we're both country music fans, and Loretta Lynn, the famous country singer, has this quote out there that says, you want to be first, best, or different. So, Greg and I have used that in countless presentations with these presidents, and it just makes sense to them. In this case, Rex Horn had a chance to be first, best, and different. And that's sort of how these programs get launched.
I mean, Mike was a wrestling coach, not an economics professor, but this kind of stuff makes sense.
Let's just say that tuition is typically $35,000. And let's say that on average, the school discounts its tuition by $15,000. So they're clearing $20,000 per student, whether they're an athlete or not. So if you get 40 wrestlers on the team and your margin is $20,000, that's $800,000 of gross revenue that you're bringing in. Then you subtract out the scholarships, operating budget, and coaching salaries. You're still making a ton of money, but here's the other piece of it. The scholarships aren't a real cost unless that scholarship athlete is displacing a regular student that's not an athlete, that otherwise is paying full room, board, and tuition. At an enrollment-driven school, let's just say the class is only half empty or it's three-quarters full. It's not costing you anything that a couple of those remaining seats go to a scholarship athlete, but you still could have upwards to 25 or 30 students on the wrestling team that are still paying the full freight.
Title IX can sometimes be a divisive topic within the college sports landscape. On one side, we've seen women's sports explode since the law was enacted in 1972. On the flip side, we've seen men's programs, typically from non-revenue or Olympic sports, cut as a means to either satisfy budget issues or by trying to satisfy proportionality by cutting men's sports to get your numbers in line. That's the divisive part of the topic. Title IX has three different ways you can apply it when it comes to college athletics. In short, the percentage of your student athletes has to mirror that of your undergraduate enrollment, meaning if your school is 60% female, 60% of your athletes have to be female. Prong 2 is adding continued opportunities for the underrepresented gender. This may be something along the lines of adding a new women's sport every 3 to 5 years if women are the underrepresented gender. This also does go both ways. Or prong 3, that you have met all the interests and needs of the students. There's a bunch more to it in terms of how it applies to college athletics, which you can actually find at ncaa.org and search Title IX. They have a whole Q&A on it. But for the purposes of why Title IX is relevant in this situation, you don't add a new sport without being in compliance somewhere, or in some cases out of compliance somewhere. If you have the room to add a men's sport or a women's sport, you look at your proportionality numbers, which is prong 1. If you're out of compliance with prong 1 and you need to add a women's sport, well, there you satisfy prong 2. Typically, prong 3 doesn't really get challenged very much because prong 1 is straight numbers. That's kind of a crash course in gender equity when it comes to adding a new sport. And this isn't specific to wrestling. This is any sport across any institution receiving federal funds. That's how the law is written. So finances and gender equity. How does Ouachita figure this out?
And so we looked at it more like we want to have the same number of sports. We have women's volleyball, for instance, don't have men's volleyball. So, you just want to have the same number of sports, and you really want to get as close to the number of participants there. And then you want to make sure that you're being fair on the athletic funding, scholarships and things like that. So, and let's face it, on most D2 level sports, you're not making money as far as at the gate and all of this sort of thing for sports. You may make a little bit and get some sponsors, but it's not like, again, we mentioned the University of Arkansas that can look at the end of the year and raise however many tens of millions of dollars. It doesn't happen there.
The landscape of college athletics and economics is different than it was 20 years ago. The sport of wrestling has evolved when it comes to its relationship to Title IX.
What's different today is that they can add a men's and women's wrestling program together, which is just so much more cost effective than adding a men's wrestling program and some other women's sport that might require designing a whole new field and everything that goes along with that. With men's and women's wrestling, once you have a wrestling room, it can be used by both. You don't double the cost. That's where, even though it's still the center of the conversation, wrestling is just now much more attractive as a result of a school being able to add both men's and women's programs.
Another thing administrators from other schools were looking at is that whole first, best, or different thing. Well, best. How quickly can a team be one of the best in the country? In the case of the OBU Tigers, didn't take long because of the right hire.
And so we typically will provide a slate of 3 to 5 coaching prospects for the school. And in some cases, we've been very successful in helping schools hire what I would consider more of a non-traditional coach, maybe someone that's been in the business world, but has some coaching experience and comes from a storied program. So the Ouachita Baptist, the coach was Kevin Ward. The word that comes to my mind is rock star. And so you get a brand new program and you get a rock star coach, and you're going to get phenomenal results. I think in their 3rd or 4th year, they had finished 3rd or 4th in the NCAA Division II national championships.
Rock star, huh? Well, let's meet this rock star who hails from Soddy Daisy, Tennessee.
My name is Kevin Ward. I'm the head wrestling coach at Army West Point, have been for the past 5 years, and prior to coming to West Point, I was the head coach at Ouachita Baptist University. I was the first head coach at Ouachita Baptist University. I took over that program and started it in August or 2010 and I was there for 4 years.
Two things immediately jump out about Kevin Ward and where he is now. Currently, he's a Division I head wrestling coach at the United States Military Academy, a.k.a. Army, a.k.a. Army West Point. He got that job because of his success at Ouachita Baptist. A Tennessee native who wrestled at Oklahoma State University for John Smith, never an All-American, but he had plenty of experience with Arkansas. Well, kinda.
What I knew about Arkansas was I-40 ran through it, and that's how I drove from Tennessee to Oklahoma. And I knew that wrestling really didn't exist at all, or not even at all in Arkansas at any level. So I thought I just knew it was odd. I would drive across the state of Arkansas to get to kind of the wrestling capital of America, and for that 4 or 5 hours I was on I-40, you're kind of in wrestling wasteland.
As we tell the story of Little Rock wrestling, the eyes of Division I presidents and athletic directors around the country are paying attention to what's going on there. But before anyone could pay attention to Little Rock, the presidents and athletic directors within the state of Arkansas were paying attention to what was going on at Ouachita Baptist. Sometimes it's being at the wrong place at the right time or the right place at the wrong time. The story usually lies somewhere in the middle.
I interviewed for a couple jobs, and the one job I really wanted was an assistant coaching job, and I didn't get it. And then maybe 2-3 weeks after that, I got a call from Pat Smith saying, "Hey, I heard you're trying to get back into wrestling. I have an opportunity. I think you'd be great for it." As it turns out, I think that I think just no one else was either desperate or stupid or hungry enough to take the job, I think, and but I was probably all of those things, and I took the job and some good fortune and hard work, and it worked out.
With any new job, there's risk, and with any new sports program, there's risk. Geographically, Ouachita didn't make a whole lot of sense at the time. The nearest opponent within Division II was 6 hours west in Edmond, Oklahoma. So when programs started popping up after Ouachita started, Ward kind of got excited.
Oh, man, that was an exciting time because I remember, when I first got there was no schedule. I mean, there was nothing. It was literally, the program was an idea at the time. And I think that first season, there was another opponent in Central Baptist, but outside of that, our closest competition was about 6 hours away, maybe more. So to see some programs be added that were maybe just a little bit closer, it was an exciting time. I mean, I could get a sense for, okay, this is growing and other schools are picking up on it. But, I think the competitor in me, to me, it just meant, okay, I had to work harder and had to make sure that our program was, the one that when kids were looking at Arkansas, that we were the flagship program.
But in the landscape of college sports, Division II doesn't really move the needle nationally. What's it going to take for a Division I program to start in Arkansas? How realistic was that, at least in Coach Ward's perspective?
Pipe dream, really. Didn't see it, but as soon as you meet Greg, and I always said, all right, if he sets his mind to it, when he really gets involved, he can make it happen. And, obviously the talk in Arkansas is Fayetteville and University of Arkansas, but, they went with the really smart move and were able to get the program started a school that I think the program is going to be wildly successful at Little Rock for a few reasons. I think the school is going to value it. I think the community is going to embrace it. I think they made a fantastic hire. I didn't see it coming, but in hindsight, when Greg says he wants to do something, he's a winner, and more often than not, he finds a way to get things done.
Praise is sometimes not existent when a school like Ouachita Baptist or Lyon College or Williams Baptist, all three schools in Arkansas, add wrestling at the sub D1 level or at the NAIA level. You heard Rex Horn say, if not for high school wrestling, Ouachita Baptist likely would not have a Division II wrestling program. Moyer offers a few more things to consider when looking at what schools are adding wrestling and the long-term effects of those schools having the sport.
So the idea that we know that every Division II, Division III, NAIA junior college program we get started, it moves us towards getting that Division I program. And sometimes, I know in the wrestling community, people are quick to dismiss, well, it's just a Division II program. It's just a Division III program. But it should never be underestimated the importance of building that momentum toward a Division I program. And so probably with Little Rock, Arkansas, I'm guessing I made 3 or 4 visits to the administration there. And we also met with some other presidents and athletic directors at some other Division I schools in the state. And it's that old adage that, people in sales will tell you, every time you hear no, you're just one no closer to a yes. And so you don't let it discourage you and dampen your enthusiasm, but you just know it's a law of averages. And the more presidents and athletic directors you meet with, the better your chances are. And but it is no small undertaking. It's a major investment in time and resources. And but if you just stay after it, eventually good things happen, and that's what happened at Arkansas Little Rock.
I hope it is, sincerely, and I think it will be the start of something. We'll look back on this maybe in 10 years and say, okay, we're so glad that they got started because they gave some other school presidents and athletic directors confidence that this can be successful.
We'll always be proud of the fact that we were first up, the first school, and I wanted to be a part of that.
You can be first, you can be best, or you can be different. Rocked Up is a presentation of the Matt Talk Podcast Network and can be found on the web at getrockedup.com or on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found. For more wrestling-specific podcasts, check out matttalkonline.com. If you like the show and want to support it, leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/matttalkonline.